So, it looks like GriGri, works like GriGri, like GriGri. So let's do some of those strange experiments and figure out if it is a GriGri. And to make things complete, I will also include Neox into the mix, also known as GriGri. And in case you want a TLDR version, when it comes to cam-assisted devices, Pinch is probably the best alternative to GriGri right now. And if you want to know if it is better than GriGri, then the answer is not that simple. So let's see. All right. So the only truly unique feature of this device is that you can attach it directly to the harness without the need of extra carabiner, which I thought it's a super cool idea. However, what everybody instantly notices that this button, which releases the device, is not multi-action. So it's pretty easy to press on it and remove the device. So the question is, can that happen during the belaying? And Edelrid got bombarded by this question.
Oh yeah, I don't know how often I saw this, and honestly I was quite surprised that this is the first thing people think of, and also with what passive-aggressive criticism this gets.
So yeah, if you worry about safety, you are passive-aggressive. But since my name got there somehow, I feel I have a duty now. So to investigate this, let's divide it into 4 possible states. First, when the device is loaded, then the device is unloaded, and the transition between these 2 states. So let's begin with unloaded scenario, and let's see what Edelrid has to say about that.
Could I accidentally open the device in an unloaded scenario? And the answer to this is no. It is simply impossible when you are attentive and you operate the device as shown in the user's manual.
So, understood? Read the friendly manual, and then it's safe. But yeah, before Phil starts hating me, let's look into this deeper. So, there's actually only one spot where I can press the button. It's right here. If I start pressing somewhere else, nothing happens. And this button is nicely flush with the plastic around, so pressing from the sides, nothing happens. Plus, the button has pretty stiff spring. You need to press it quite hard to open. If the device is unloaded and I would try to press the button, I'm simply gonna push the device to the side and nothing is gonna happen. Even if I try to poke it really hard, ow, 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 ow. Ow! So the only way I can imagine pressing that button in unloaded scenario is if I would, I don't know, get knocked by the rock, fall on the ground and somehow press on that button and release the device. How likely for that is to happen? Probably not very. Okay, next scenario. The device is loaded. Well, I'm trying to load it. Now I can press the button. Okay. But I cannot open the device. Well, apparently I can. That was not planned. That was the first attempt. Ah, okay, see what happens. And I was pulling down on the brake strand really hard, and then it got loaded, but it got loaded in this downwards facing direction, and then somehow by pushing on the button I managed to slip the sling a little bit, and now I can open it. Normally, if the load is really high, probably I would not be able to pull the device down as much, and then in this scenario, if I press the button and I would try to open it, it would not open because there is this little extra lip which is hooking on the belay loop. So here is actually a good moment to talk that there is a limit on belay loop width. If it's too wide, it's not good because the device will sit sideways. But if it's very skinny, like the one that I have right now, then it's more likely that the loop could sit in some strange orientation. So I would be more cautious with super skinny harnesses like this one. Now, what if the device is loaded? I press the button, and in that moment somehow it would unload. Could it unclip at this moment? Well, I wouldn't say no, but at the same time it's very, very unlikely. So yeah, personally with this super skinny belay loop, I was using this device with a backup carabiner. Maybe with thicker belay loops my monkey brain would be happier. However, I'm certain that if this button would be double action, then I would be much happier. Also, this direct attachment to the harness requires a little bit more attention. I had a viewer of mine send me a picture where he accidentally clipped like this, which I can see how that can happen quite easily, where the rope runs like so. Also, if you don't pay attention and you have very skinny belay loop, you can accidentally close it like so. And you might not notice this. And this is very dangerous because it can easily open. So yeah, pay attention and do the double check before you start climbing, always. Alternatively, you of course have an option to attach it with the carabiner like any other belay device. However, in this case, pinch sits really far from the harness because it actually has this lip which is longer than on most of belaying devices, and it becomes really uncomfortable to use. And it kind of defeats the main benefit of pinch. So yeah. All right, now before we go to actual benefits of direct attachment to the harness, let me first debunk one kind of a myth now, that you can give more slack this way when the device is close to the harness. This is actually the opposite. So if I have a GriGri and I give slack like this, yes, now I can give a little bit less slack. But guess what? I can push GriGri down, giving much more slack. So I pull the rope and push the device down. This is actually a very cool technique for short climbers or short arm belayers. And before my comment section explodes, I have to say that there is multiple ways to give slack. You can do this, you can do that. And I'm not here to debate which method is the best, the safest. However, I will compare every device in all of these methods, so no matter what you use or what you like, you will know which device is the best for you. So back to the pinch, directly attached to the harness. And the main benefit of that is that it's closer to the harness, is less floppy around, and when it falls down, it does not fall as much down. So it makes it much easier to find blindly with your hands. And this brings me to the first mistake, where I tried to use pinch like I would use GriGri, where I would take my index finger and hook under the slip and give slack like this. However, you quickly realize that this lip is way too small and it's not comfortable to hook with index finger. Then I started grabbing with my thumb around like this, and actually this is not how pinch is supposed to be belayed. So with pinch, you're supposed to have all your fingers wrapped around the rope and use only the thumb to gently press on the cam and give slack like this. And this works really, really well. So objectively thinking, 4 fingers is more than 3, and it also encourages you to not touch the device when you don't need it. So it must be a little bit safer. While on contrast with GriGri, if I hook my finger here and I relax too much, I might not actually hold the rope at all. And I already made a video of what can happen in that scenario. So don't get too lazy and actually hold the rope, especially with super skinny ropes. Alright, so how does the pinch work in practice? The first thing I noticed that the pinch is pretty heavy, and it's front heavy because it has a steel insert in the front. So after you give slack, it will fall down. It does not fall down as much as the GriGri because it's closer to the harness, but it does fall down and there is no way to stop that because you're not supposed to be hooking on it. So every time you give slack, it falls down and then you have to blindly find the rope again and give slack. So at first this was kind of uncomfortable, but I thought that the longer I will use it, the more I will get used to it and eventually it's gonna be fine. And after using it for quite a while, belaying my partner's projecting different routes, eventually I kind of got used to this. However, the first time I switched back to GriGri, I instantly felt how much easier it is to give slack, for me. Then you give slack like this and the device doesn't fall anywhere at all. So the first takeaway, if you are a GriGri user and you like giving slack like this, stay with GriGri. if you're someone who doesn't like this idea of having hands close to belay device, then pinch is much better option. Now, in case you like giving slack like this, in a tube style, then I actually tested all the devices with different rope thicknesses. With skinny ropes, it doesn't matter. All the devices work very well with skinny ropes. Once the ropes get slightly thicker to like 9.5, then GriGri becomes unreliable. It starts locking up too much, while pinch was working really well. However, the king of the hill was Neox, because it's pretty much designed to be belayed like this. It's incredibly smooth, even with the ropes up to like 10 millimeters, it's still super smooth. So if that's how you belay, then Neox is your best belay device. Okay, now one thing that I did not like about the pinch, that it felt that it takes more effort to pull the rope through. I asked you guys, and some of you said that actually pinch is much smoother than GriGri. However, others said that pulling the rope through pinch feels like doing chores.
So first, I wanted to measure how much internal friction each device has. I kept adding weights and checking when the rope started to slip. First observation was that my old GriGri had slightly lower friction compared to brand new one. This is probably due to smoothening and rounded edges, and I should probably retire this GriGri already. And pinch, depending on the rope, had up to 30% more friction compared to a brand new GriGri. Now, I was expecting that Neox will beat all of these devices. However,
that is surprising.
Turns out that my Neox had so much dust that the wheel does not spin as smooth as it used to.
So I did buy a new Neox, nice black one, I like it. And it is actually significantly smoother. It's crazy smooth. So I contacted Petzl and asked how to clean my old Neox, and once I get a response I will try and see if cleaning helps, or actually Neoxes have some dirty issues. So I'm gonna make a separate video on that.
Now, I did not want to rely on a single Ooga Booga test, so I did another one. This time I wanted to measure how much energy it takes to give one arm of slack. To make things as equal as possible, for the GriGri I used a tiny carabiner. This way the amount of rope pulled through all the devices is very similar. And then I used a small load cell to measure the forces over time, which should give me this value.
Man, this is significantly harder.
Now, as you can imagine, having consistency in such tests is really difficult. That's why I needed a lot of samples, a lot of data points to reach statistically significant numbers.
Wow, my shoulder is working on this device.
Also, I had an unexpected discovery that such way of giving and taking slack many times
Macaroni
causes many tangles in the rope, which I had to remove before every experiment. So yeah, new Neox this time felt the smoothest.
Man, that's a difference.
Very closely followed by GriGri. And pinch was double the trouble.
This feels much harder. All right, next up. Now I'm gonna regret this. This is 10 millimeters rope. I already feel my shoulder from 9.5.
So with 10 millimeters rope, GriGri was hard to use.
Definitely usable. Not easy though, but usable.
But pinch was another level.
Let's see how this goes. Oh yeah! It's an actual workout now.
However, Neox was impressive in a good way.
Okay, new GriGri. Oh wow! Okay. That's nice. Oh, but it locks.
Now, taking the slack felt really great with pinch. There was no back slip at all. However, when it comes to lowering, I had anti-panic engaging all the time.
Wow, it's...
Or the third one.
And yes, you can override it by pulling the lever even more, which works well. However, in certain projecting situations when the climber asks to lower just a bit and anti-panic kicks in, it causes a jarring experience both for the climber and for the belayer.
Now, good part is that you can actually disable this anti-panic feature by inserting a little screw that came into the package. Unfortunately for me, I had no idea what that screw is when I got the device, and now I have no idea where that screw is.
Moving forward, the front of the pinch has a steel insert, so if you let the rope run through that, it should make the device last much longer, unlike the GriGri where it develops grooves over the edge. It should also provide more control in lowering with skinnier ropes. However, from my testing, I could barely feel a difference.
So this steel insert is a nice addition. However, I do slightly prefer having my hand on the side when lowering. So I would prefer having steel on the side like GriGri Plus has, and maybe a little bit less when in the front to have less weight.
All right, next experiment.
Ready? I mean, done.
So I have done a bunch of these tests with GriGri in the past, and it pretty much imitates of what happens if you don't hold the rope and there was no slack in the system in the beginning.
Basically, first attempt and it already slipped. And nothing. Just for comparison, let's compare against GriGri, and then let's compare against GriGri. Ah, I need a carabiner. Ah, see how great the pinch is. You don't even need a carabiner. Oh yes, swing it so it falls straight on my head and kills me. And this is GriGri. Yeah, I've done this in the past a lot, and it's possible to make it completely slip, but way harder. Okay, just for sake of comparison, this is GriGri. Some people asked why I call it GriGri. Let's go. I think this is even worse than pinch. It seemed like it's falling much faster. Yes. This is definitely more sketchy.
Now, every time I do these tests, someone will complain that I'm using too low weights, but I have already explained in my Physics of GriGri video how friction affects the forces. So I highly recommend to watch that video, but long story short, with enough friction, your climber becomes very light.
Let's maybe try with more weight, because there's always people complaining about me using low weights. Oh, sheesh. It's not gonna kill me? I guess I'm not gonna try that with Neox. Or should I? I should! Shit, now it's a bit sketchy. Okay, this is definitely much more sketchy.
So when it comes to this test, GriGri was the safest, followed by pinch, and Neox was the most likely to slip.
So I got a comment that catches with pinch felt harder than catches with GriGri. So what I'm gonna try is to measure the forces. I am a bit skeptical about this. I mean, when GriGri catches, there is the carabiner which moves up. So maybe that plays a role. 3, 4. Okay. 077. 3, 4. 66, exactly the same. 68. So I'm getting consistent results. It's not even like that, it's progressively loading, it's just goes whoosh, bah. The only difference would be if there would be different slippage in the device, but both of these devices seem to have similar slippage, which is very little. So equal. However, what should play more of a bigger effect is doing a proper soft catch. It's a bit silly to even try on this test setup, but let's see if I can do anything. Half, 0.35 compared to the previous one. So that's a good illustration how soft catch plays a much bigger role. And actually my next video is gonna be about soft catches and catching falls for my belay masterclass. So stay tuned. All right, so takeaways. GriGri is definitely smoother to pull the rope through. However, this is only noticeable on thicker ropes like 9.5 or above, or some older, fuzzier ropes. Now, if you belayed in the past with GriGri and you like this index finger hooking on the lip to pay the slack, buy GriGri, stay with GriGri, be happy with GriGri. However, if you're not a fan of touching the belaying device, then pinch is definitely an amazing alternative for you. It works surprisingly well. Very nice. And I would pick Neox if I would primarily belay like this, or I would use very, very thick, beefy ropes, like 10 millimeters or above ropes. It's only usable with Neox. And before we finish, I wanted to share a story with you. When I was in university, I had a calculus teacher who was probably one of the best teachers we had back then there. And that teacher worked at a bank, at a high position in the bank. So he was making much more money in his bank job than teaching us. And because of that, one day somebody asked him like, hey, what's the point for you to come here every year and teach us when you are already there in your glamorous life? And his answer actually stuck to me till this day. He said, well, it's an exercise for my brain and I don't want to forget the basics. So yeah, for me that was a very nice message to never stop learning, and that's why I've been happily using and promoting the sponsor of today's video, Brilliant. Brilliant is a learning app that can transform your little downtime moments into learning opportunities. It has thousands of short and fun lessons in math, science, programming, data analysis, and AI. And speaking of AI, one might think, what's the point of even learning these basic math skills when we have ChatGPT who can spit even complicated answers to us? However, to that my answer is, how are you gonna know if the answer you got from ChatGPT actually makes sense? And then what's the point of you if you cannot distinguish sense from nonsense? So Brilliant helps to build your critical thinking through problem solving and not memorizing, which is way more effective than simply watching lectures. It has nicely structured courses crafted by world-class teachers that always start from the basics, so you never get lost. So yeah, a fun way of learning that I've been really enjoying, that you can try for free for 30 days by visiting brilliant.org/hardiseasy, or click that. There's also a link in the description, and you will also get 20% off their annual premium subscription. So thank you for being curious, enjoy climbing, and see you in the next one.